Next, I cordially welcome Professor Avinash Kaur Nagpal ma'am, Department of Botanical and Environmental Sciences, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. She has 32 years of teaching experience and 38 years of research experience. Her fields of specialization are environmental monitoring and genotoxicity, anti-mutagenic, potential of medicinal plants, plant tissue culture, plant databases, and bioinformatics. She has published more than 130 articles in journals, and she has received 6 projects from CSIR, UGC, Punjab government. She has acted as coordinator for environmental management component of UPE. She held various positions in Guru Nanak Dev University as chairperson in medical and health committee, dean faculty of life sciences, member syndicate, and member senate, etc. She has also honored by many awards in which research associateship in 1988 and 1989, and vocational award in 2011, senior scientist award and lifetime achievement award is included. Let me kindly invite such learned Professor Avinash Nagpal ma'am, who is going to be deliver the topic global environment threats and solution. Hand over the session to you, please, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Just a moment. At the outset, I thank the organizers of this faculty development program, especially Professor Muthuchelian, Ma'am Uma Sundari, Secretary Pearl Program, and Principal VHNSN College. It's a rare opportunity, and I thank you very much, and I hope everybody around is safe and healthy. The topic I have chosen today is global environmental threats and solutions. So environment, as we all know, is everything which surrounds us. Atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and above all, the biosphere. We always want clean and green environment, and our Earth started with clean and green environment, and over a period of time, due to industrialization, urbanization, increase in food production, commercialization, economic growth, rising living standards, they have caused a lot of havoc in the environment, and the environment is polluted. This rapid progress of our industries, urbanization, commercialization has brought immense economic and social benefits. But at the same time, it has accentuated the environmental, social, and health problems. We have witnessed these rapid increase in industries and urbanization during the later half of the last century and these 2 decades of the present century. And we have witnessed a number of changes in the environment. The global environmental threats at present include climate change, stratospheric ozone layer depletion, resource crunch, habitat destruction, and species extinction. When we talk about climate change, we need to know what is climate. As we all know that climate is average and extremes of the temperature, hot and cold. It's the moisture content in and around, which may be wet or dry. Whether our mountains are snow-packed or snow has melted, our winds and storm tracks, and ocean currents and upwelling, and their patterns in space and time. Small changes in global average surface temperature entails large and consequential changes in climatic patterns. Climate is known to govern productivity of farms, forests and fisheries, prevalence of oppressive heat and humidity, geography of disease, damages from storms, floods, droughts, wildfires, property losses from sea level rise, expenditures on engineered environments, and distribution and abundance of species. Climate at present is changing in threatening ways. It is very unusual. It is changing at a pace far outside the range of expected natural variation, and it is actually in the opposite direction from what was known natural cyclic influences on climate would otherwise be causing at this time. So it's the speed is very fast than the natural way of climate change. So we have seen that glaciers are melting, sea surface temperatures are increasing, oceans are becoming acidic, there is poleward migration of species, and there are freak weather patterns which are seen world over. According to a study, the average global air temperature near Earth's surface has increased by 0.74 degrees centigrade during the 100 years ending 2005. What are the evidences of climate change? They include evaporation and rainfall increasing, the retreating of coastal glaciers, disappearance of mountain glaciers, thawing of permanent permafrost, melting of Greenland, sea level rising, and the migration of species. All these include evidences of climate change. So you can see this glacier in Alaska, Muir Glacier in Alaska. The figure on the left is 1941 and figure on the right is 2004. And tremendous change. The ice has melted during these years. So these are the two glaciers, one in Austria, Pestersee Glacier in 1875. And you can see the receding of this glacier in 2004. Similarly, Alaska, you can see this one is much earlier, and this is in 2004. So this is another glacier in Africa, and the scene in 1970 and in 2004. The situation of Himalayan Glacier is no different. They are also depleting at a faster rate. So these include Biaskun Glacier, Siachen Glacier, Rohtang Glacier, Nanak Glacier, and we can see the receding Gangotri Glacier. This is a scenario. The glacier extended till this point in 1780, and then it receded, and in 2001 it has receded to much larger distance. This is again receding of glacier of Nepal. Another example of receding glacier in Alaska. Sea ice is shrinking. This picture of 1979, this is of 2003. And North Polar ice cap is known as the sea ice. And this red boundary is the boundary which was seen in 1979. And this is the boundary which is seen in 2003. Almost more than 20% recession of this polar ice cap has occurred. The serious impacts of climate change include floods, droughts, heat waves, wildfires. There are powerful tropical storms, heat stress from ocean warming, and moist tropical forests are drying out and burning. So we can see increase in floods from 1950 to 2000 in all the continents. Similarly, there is tremendous increase in wildfires in all the continents. Global warming is a major aspect of climate change, and we have seen an exponential increase in the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases such as nitrous oxide, ozone, methane, etc. And they result in global warming. This global warming means that this is due to greenhouse effect. To explain greenhouse effect, the solar energy from the sun, it passes through the atmosphere and reaches the Earth's surface and warms up the Earth's surface. Some of this energy is reflected back to the space. The Earth's surface, when it is heated up, it radiates the heat back to the space. So the greenhouse gases, which make a sphere around the Earth's surface, they reflect this heat back to the Earth atmosphere, so that again heats up our climate, and this is known as the greenhouse effect. This can be more clear if we think about a car. When the doors and windows are closed, sunlight can pass through the windscreen and warm up the inside of the car. The heat can't get out of the car through the glasses or the windscreen, so the car becomes hotter. And we all have witnessed the hot cars when we keep it in the sun, and when we enter into the car, it is like a hot oven. So this is the greenhouse effect or the glasshouse effect. The gases which are known as greenhouse gases, they include methane, hydrofluorocarbons, carbon dioxide, nitroxide, perfluorocarbons, and ozone. Bill Gates quoted somewhere, climate change is a terrible problem and it absolutely needs to be solved. It deserves to be a huge priority. The book Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson in 1962, was the first book which brought the ill impacts of environmental pollution in the global limelight. It was the first book which told the world that we are facing environmental pollution and it is causing a havoc in our day-to-day life. It is causing havoc to the diversity of life. It is causing havoc to the health of human beings. And this book led to the formation of US Environment Protection Agency. In short, we call it as US EPA. The causes of climate change can be natural or anthropogenic, or we can call them as man-made. Among the natural causes are forest fires, changes in ocean currents, volcanoes, variations in solar radiations, and path of Earth and Sun, which is the path of Earth around Sun is getting closer every year. So we are more closer to Sun than earlier times. But these natural causes do not explain the extraordinary warming and climatic variations which has occurred over the last 50 to 70 years. The anthropogenic causes include power stations. We know that there is an exponential increase in power stations to meet the ever-increasing demand of electricity. The number of industries are increasing. Transportation rate is increasing. We have more number of automobiles. We have more number of air traffic. We have more number of cars on the roads. And that leads to pollution of the environment. Agricultural byproducts also lead to climate change. Fossil fuel burning in industries and automobiles is a bigger problem. Residential, commercial, and other sources also contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. Land use and biomass burning is another factor which contributes to greenhouse gases. Waste disposal and treatment. All these affect the climate change. So fossil fuels, which are important for industries and automobiles, they are made from plant materials which have been buried underground for millions of years. Coal, petrol, and diesel are the main fuels which cause pollution, and they cause increase in greenhouse effect, which is caused by greenhouse gases. The extensive fossil fuel burning has increased atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide from 280 ppm in 1750 to nearly 400 ppm in 2012. The other greenhouse gases also increased exponentially in the last 300 years. The anthropogenic causes also include deforestation. Forests act as biggest sinks of greenhouse gases. And during the 20th century, the forests have been devastatingly cut for human needs. They have been used for firewood, wood for construction, for conversion of forest land to farmland, ranches, urban use, or industrial activities. As per State of India's Forest Report 2019, only 21% of the land is under forest cover as against 33% recommended by National Forest Policy. But non-government sources or unofficial sources say that this value is much, much less. The other anthropogenic sources of greenhouse gases include livestock enteric fermentation, management of manure, paddy farming, pipeline losses, landfill emissions, mining, use of chlorofluorocarbons, fertilizers, oceanic and surface water pollution, which results in reduction in phytoplankton because phytoplankton absorbs most of the carbon dioxide. So our day-to-day activities, they increase the load of carbon dioxide, and this is measured as carbon footprints. What are carbon footprints? The total amount of greenhouse gases which are produced to support directly or indirectly human activities, usually expressed in terms of carbon dioxide equivalent. And this is based on conversion tables given by Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So we contribute to carbon footprint in number of ways, like share of public services. Whatever services we are using, they need a building, and for the construction of buildings, certain industries are involved, and then the manufacture of these buildings, they involve the release of carbon dioxide. All the activities, the electricity used involves the use of carbon dioxide. For example, gas, oil, and coal we use, that leads to production of carbon dioxide and other gases. Electricity generation powerhouses, they again generate lot of greenhouse gases. Private transport also lead to production of greenhouse gases. Public transport, production of food and drinks, even holiday flights, clothes and other requirements, carbon in the car manufacturing, household buildings and furnishing. Everything we use, we may think that we do not produce carbon dioxide, but everything we use has an impact on our contribution to the carbon footprint. So as consumerism increases, the carbon footprint increase. So some scary facts about climate change. There is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now than any time in the last 8,000 years. The world average temperature has increased by 1 to 1.7 degree Fahrenheit over the past 100 years. Global sea levels have risen by about 8 inches since 1870. So almost 250 years from now, sorry, it's 150 years from now, we have so much increase in the sea levels. The Greenland, which is Jacobsen Glacier, which is in the Greenland, is getting retreated and thinned by every year, and in the year 2010 alone, it has retreated by 1.5 inches. The earth is not dying, it is being killed, and the people who are killing have names and addresses. So they are you and me. We all are responsible for our effect on the environment. The consequences of this change, we have already seen: melting of glaciers, rise in global mean surface air temperature. So this is the year 1815 and 1900, 1950 and 2000. So we can see that the last decade, last 50 years from 1950 to 2000, there was a tremendous increase. There's a sharp increase in temperature. There's a sharp rise in sea level, and there's a tremendous decrease in the snow cover. So these 50 years had been very important and devastating years in the history of the earth. So there's increased intensity of floods and droughts, and at some places we see floods, at others we see the droughts. There's a decrease in biological diversity and extinction of sensitive species. And whenever there's a climate change, the species which are not able to adapt to the changing climate, they are going to get extinct. And it is expected that up to 30% of the species will be at increased risk for extinction due to rapid changes in their ecosystems. There's shortage of fresh water, and because of shortage of fresh water, we have decreased groundwater levels, and there's increasing acid rains. The second global threat is depletion of ozone layer. Ozone layer is also known as Earth's protection umbrella, which is made up of ozone gas. This ozone layer is located in the stratosphere of the Earth's atmosphere, which is 10 to 50 kilometers from the sea level. Concentration of ozone is highest between an altitude of 20 to 25 kilometers cube from the Earth's surface. To define stratosphere, let's understand what is the different layers of atmosphere. Atmosphere has been categorized into 5 different spheres. Troposphere is just above the Earth's surface. It extends up to 10 kilometers of an altitude. Above troposphere is the stratosphere, which is the width of 40 kilometers, from 10 kilometers from the Earth's surface up to 50 kilometers from the Earth's surface. Above the stratosphere, we have the mesosphere, thermosphere, and the exosphere. But our concern here is the stratosphere, which is also known as the aircraft flying zone. And in this sphere, we have the ozone layer. So it's not a single layer kind of a thing, but here in this particular region, the concentration of ozone is maximum. And this maximum concentration occurs at an altitude of about 20 to 25 kilometers from Earth's surface. So before we know that, what is ozone? It is an irritating corrosive gas, which has a smell like that of burning of electric wiring. The term ozone is derived from a Greek word ozine, which means to smell. It's a molecule which contains 3 atoms of oxygen. So that's why it has the formula O3. It's of 2 types, ground level ozone, which is present in the troposphere. It is also called as the bad ozone because it is toxic to living systems. Whereas stratospheric ozone, which is known as the good ozone, it absorbs UV radiations, because UV radiations are harmful to the living systems, and the good ozone in the stratosphere does not allow the UV radiation to enter the troposphere or that portion of the atmosphere where we live. So that's why it is called as a good ozone. So this is the altitude from the Earth's surface, and as we move above the troposphere, this is the troposphere region where the concentration of ozone is very low. And as we move up in the stratosphere, when we go up to 20 to 25 kilometers above the Earth's surface, the concentration of ozone is maximum, and as we go higher up, it goes on decreasing. So tropospheric ozone, which is present in the Earth's surface, just above the Earth's surface, on the portion where we live, is known as the bad ozone, and the stratospheric ozone is known as the good ozone. So discussions about ozone layer became popular in 1980s when it was discovered that there was a hole in the ozone layer above Antarctica. Scientists began accumulating evidence that ozone layer was being depleted. This depletion of ozone layer was found to result in increased UV radiations reaching the Earth's surface, which would mean overexposure of UV radiations and causing various health effects. As we know that ozone layer, it inhibits UV reaching the Earth's surface. But when there is depletion of ozone layer, so that means more UV radiation can enter Earth's surface, causing havoc to health of individuals. This is the electromagnetic spectrum of light, and this region is the visible light. And on the left-hand side of the visible light, we have the ultraviolet light, and on the right side, we have the infrared light. So on the left side, we have the radiations which have a smaller wavelength. On the right-hand side, we have the radiations which have the longer wavelength. So UV radiations have a wavelength which is relatively smaller than the visible light, and they are more penetrating, and high frequency and the smaller wavelength. So this is the region where we can see the UV light. They have been classified into three types: UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVA is not absorbed by the ozone layer, UVB is partially absorbed by the ozone layer, and UVC is completely absorbed by the ozone layer in the stratosphere. So UVA radiations have the wavelength of 315 to 400 nanometer, which is the longest wavelength among the UV radiations, and this is the least damaging type of UV radiations. And they have been implicated in causing sun-induced premature aging of skin and some cancer. UVB radiations, they have a wavelength of 280 to 350 nanometers, smaller than that of the UVA. They can cause skin cancer and eye damage, and the radiation which are close to 280 nanometer, they are strongly absorbed by proteins, and hence they damage their functions, and then they reduce the immune response. UVB radiations also interfere with photosynthesis in some crop plants, and a small exposure to UVB radiation is necessary to produce vitamin D in human skin. UVC have a wavelength which is the smallest of the UV radiations, from 100 to 280 nanometers, and this is the most dangerous member of the family, and it is a wavelength of around 260 nanometer. They are absorbed by DNA, so nearly all form of life can be irreparably damaged by this type of radiation. So this is the most important thing to note, that if we have the ozone layer is depleted more, then we are going to expect more UVC radiation in, and then it is going to cause havoc to the life on the earth. So advantage of ozone layer is that it absorbs most of the ultraviolet radiations which are harmful, UVB and UVC. How is ozone formed in the stratosphere? In the stratosphere, we have oxygen molecules, and solar radiation, they break up the oxygen molecule into two oxygen atoms. One of the oxygen atom then collides with an oxygen molecule, and we get the ozone molecule formation. Ozone depletion occurs in two ways, and solar depletion and the halogen depletion. When we talk about solar depletion, ozone in the stratosphere is tracked by UV light from the sun at a wavelength of 200 to 300 nanometer. It causes the ozone to break up into an oxygen atom and an oxygen molecule. The oxygen atom is now free to interact with the ozone molecule. When this oxygen interacts with the ozone molecule, it produces two oxygen molecules. So one ozone molecule is now converted into two oxygen molecules. This is how the ozone depletion occurs in the stratosphere. And then second is the halogen depletion, and this is mainly caused by chlorofluorocarbons, which are the pollutants. I'll talk about them in the next slides. They travel high into the stratosphere because they are very stable and not easily broken down. This is chlorofluorocarbon. These chlorofluorocarbons in the stratosphere, they are bombarded with UV radiations, and the chlorine atom is released from chlorofluorocarbons, and this free chlorine atom then attacks the ozone molecule, and it causes the release of one oxygen, and chlorooxygen is there, and this chlorooxygen then attacks the chlorooxygen then attacks the sorry. So then chlorooxygen, and then this chlorooxygen then attacks the ozone, and it causes the release of oxygen molecule and the chlorooxygen. So chlorofluorocarbons, they were the ideal compounds invented in the year 1920 by DuPont scientists, and they were termed as the wonder gases because they were not reactive molecules. They didn't react with any other agents. And then they were used as refrigerants, they were used in industrial cleaning solvents, propellants, in aerosol sprays, as well as in styrofoam. And this slide again explains the ozone depleting process. The chlorofluorocarbons, they are released and they rise into the ozone layer. The UV radiation from the sun releases the chlorine atom, and this chlorine atom then destroys the ozone, and this causes the depletion of ozone, and depletion of ozone results in more UV radiation entering the Earth's surface, causing more diseases. The dramatic loss of ozone in the lower stratosphere over Antarctica was first noticed in 1970s by a research group from the British Antarctic Survey, who were monitoring the atmosphere above the Antarctica from a research station. In 1985, scientists identified a thinning of the ozone layer over the Antarctica during the spring months, which was known as the ozone hole. So this is actually not a clear-cut hole in the ozone layer. This is actually the decrease in concentration of the ozone over a particular area over the Antarctica. Sherwood Rowland was an American chemist who shared the 1995 Nobel Prize for Chemistry with his associates Paul Curzon and Mario Molina for their work identifying the depletion of ozone layer. The major causes of ozone depletion include natural sources, 15 to 20%. Human activity contributed much more, 75 to 85%, and to a less extent, volcanic eruptions. So humans cause more damage to the ozone layer than any other source. The ozone depleting chemicals, they are chlorofluorocarbons, carbon tetrachloride, methyl chloroform, hydrochloric acid, methyl chloride, methyl bromide, etc. The impacts of ozone depletion are many, which include different types of cancer, depression in the immune system, increased incidence, severity, and duration of infectious diseases, reduced efficacy of vaccinations, pathogen locally up and down, biodiversity locally up and down, aquatic organisms affected, biomass productivity decreased, and polar systems become more vulnerable. So the next global threat is the resource crunch and pollution. So increase in pollution levels further limit the availability of already deficit resources. A resource is a material or an ingredient which is required as life support system for the living organisms on this earth. Natural resources are the materials found naturally on the earth which are useful to us. They are the gift of nature. The natural sources can be biotic or can be abiotic. Biotic resources include forests and their products, and mineral fuels such as coal and petroleum are also included in this category because they are formed from the decayed organic matter. Abiotic resources include air, soil, water, land, and ores such as gold, iron, copper, silver, etc. With respect to renewability, natural resources can be renewable or non-renewable. Among renewable resources are those which have the capacity to reappear or replenish themselves by quick recycling, reproduction, and replacement within a reasonable time. I'll hurriedly go over the slides. So we have examples of non-renewable resources, which are fossil fuels and minerals, and I'll skip these slides. So it may be noted that even renewable resources may become non-renewable if they are used too rapidly or in excess quantities, and we need to use these resources judiciously. So these are the causes of depletion of natural resources. We already know all those reasons, and we need to conserve our natural resources. And conservation, as we all know, is the wise utilization and systematic protection of natural resources. Water, the elixir of life, it is a primary natural resource and a basic human need. And we already know that less than 1% of the fresh water is available to us for different uses. And we witnessed depletion of groundwater level due to use in industries and others, and water pollution is the problem which is everywhere, and we cannot escape the effects of water pollution. So each one of us can help minimize water depletion and pollution by simple housekeeping practices, and by using less water and harvesting the rainwater. So these are some of the tips given for water conservation. Most of us are doing that, but just to remind these tips for water conservation. So moving on to the next natural source, which is soil. Soil is a natural medium for plant growth, and it supplies the nutrients for growing plants. And soil erosion is occurring due to deforestation, floods, and storms, and we need to conserve the soil. And we can conserve the soils by afforestation, preventing and checking the desertification and reclamation of waste lands. And then we can go for organic farming and vermicomposting. You already know how we use it. Electricity is a man-made resource, but we depend upon the natural resources for generation of electricity, and we need to conserve electricity. Then we conserve the natural resources. So some methods of electricity generation are greener than others, such as the solar energy or the wind energy we use. And this is an example of use of wind energy in generation of electricity. Forests, I've already been talked about in earlier two lectures. They are the biggest resource, and tremendous amount of deforestation has occurred. And then the benefits of forests, we all know that they provide us timber, they provide us firewood, they provide us medicinal plant, fruits, and other things. Are forests renewable resource? Yes, but if they are carefully managed and allowed to grow, but we are not careful in managing these forest resources. So the causes of forest degradation, agriculture, urbanization, industrialization. Mining, logging for timber, road building, forest fires, firewood collection, fuel for thought. We need to go for use of biofuels. I want to tell you one thing here. There's a tree called Copaiphora langsdorffii, and it is in the forest of Brazil. This tree produces large amount of terpene hydrocarbons in its wood and leaves. One tree can produce 30 to 53 liters of hydrocarbon per year, and a single tree can continue to produce fuel. This oil does not need any complex refining. So once it's filtered, it can straightly go into diesel, tractor, or truck. And I think we need to work on this particular species. That's my message for all of us. Then green electricity, I've already talked about. So we need to conserve the forest. We have in situ as well as ex situ methods of conservation. We can go for green buildings, and can have, if we steal the ground for a building, we can give back on the roof. So we need to improve our carbon footprint, and sustainable development is the need of the time. We need to go for industrialization or urbanization, but at the same time we need to sustain our environment. So number of international efforts have taken up. International Union for Conservation of Nature has considered sustainable development as a global priority. Millennium Summit 2000 and then Summit 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, they talk about protection of our environment. So if you really think the environment is less important than the economy, try holding your breath while you count your money. There are certain quotes, I'll just skip them. So we need to reduce our carbon footprint. We have 10 tips. We can do the carpooling. We can use our own glasses. We can try turning off the lights, switching off the computer plug, reducing our printing, and I think we need to work on eye level and not on the V level. So let's do our own bit. This is my team. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your excellent speech and smooth flow of content. Wonderful talk, ma'am. Once again, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Until be safe, be healthy. Thank you, all of you.